Let's get started. Hello, thank you all for joining us. Welcome to our virtual lecture with artist Holly Wong. My name is Emily Schlemwitz. I'm the curator at the Wisconsin Museum of Quilts and Fiber Arts. We're located in Cedarburg, Wisconsin. For those of you who haven't visited us before, we are in a converted barn. We originate 4 exhibitions per year examining both historical textiles as well as contemporary expressions of the media. And we are very excited that the museum is celebrating its 10th anniversary this year and are delighted to be kicking off this celebratory year with the exhibition Remnants. Remnants brings together 12 contemporary fiber artists from across the country who make work from scraps that have overlooked, once worn, or abandoned fiber fragments. This exhibition runs through April 25th, 2021, and we will be providing virtual programming throughout the run of the show. Our first program is with Holly, who has a beautiful installation of her work, Spiral Dance, in the exhibition. We are incredibly grateful to our sponsor for this program, Surface Design Association, who generously provided Holly with a small event grant originally to come install the work at the museum and was very gracious to support this virtual program. The recording of this lecture will be available afterward on Surface Design's Vimeo page, as well as the museum's YouTube channel. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Holly. Holly Wong lives and works in San Francisco, California, where she earned her MFA in New Genres from the San Francisco Art Institute. She creates installations integrating non-traditional approaches with more traditional sewing techniques associated with the history of women. Her approach is both non-conventional, but also deeply rooted in her history and culture. She has been awarded visual arts grants from the Integrity Arts and Culture Association, Barbara Deming Memorial Fund, the George Sugarman Foundation, the Puffin Foundation, and a Gerbode Foundation Purchase Award. She has had over 70 group exhibitions and 10 solo exhibitions at venues such as the Berkeley Art Museum, the Carving Studio and Sculpture Center in Vermont, the Visual Art Exchange in North Carolina, and the Evanston Art Center in Illinois, where I first saw her beautiful work. She is a member of SFWA Gallery in San Francisco and AIR Gallery in Brooklyn, New York. So thank you so much. I am going to disappear and let Holly present her work, and then we will spend some time going through the gallery.
Shall I start?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I wanted to also add that just over the summer, I was very grateful to join Slate Contemporary Gallery in Oakland, California. So very excited about that. And I figured that in order to give really good context to my work, I wanted to give an overview since I have been working in a fiber-based way for several years, and my work has transitioned also into drawing-based installations. So I'll start with some of the works from 2018. This is a piece called Mind Forest, which was shown at the visual, this was actually in Raleigh, North Carolina, the Visual Art Exchange there. And it's basically polyester tulle and duraline and gauze. It's about 20 feet wide and about 15 feet deep. Very large installation. I used a sewing machine and I basically ran hundreds of yards of the tulle through it. The thread was colored and it had a light reflective quality, very much like dendrites in the brain. So I was thinking a lot about mental processes in this work. This piece was at the Evanston Arts Center, a show in 2019. It was a solo show. This piece is 30 feet in length. This piece is called Grandfather Dragon and is dedicated to my husband, artist and educator Al Wong. And it is made of polyester tulle as well. I cut probably hundreds of squares of tulle and then pieced it with a sewing machine with light reflective thread. and then started to fold and layer it on the wall with matte pins. I was influenced by Chinese landscape painting at this point, and the notion of form and emptiness coexisting. This piece is called Silent Music. It was designed for Evanston Arts Center, and it's about 18 feet wide, and about maybe 7 or 8 feet high. It was named after the jazz musician Bill Evans' masterpiece, Waltz for Debbie. There's a line in the piece where it says, "She danced to silent music." I took hundreds of hand-cut pieces of gift wrap film and dichroic film and sewed it into these modules that I then suspended. There are these dark passages in it, which is Xeroxed origami paper on transparency that I ran through a sewing machine. So the transparencies and the floating quality made some people think it was a dragon. This work, you'll start to see goddesses emerge in my work. So a lot of this work that you're going to see now is all from 2020, which I made while under the shelter-in-place order. This series is called Bia. These were 19 by 24 assemblages, colored pencil and graphite on drafting film. I should say that I have always loved pattern. I've always loved fabric. I tried to quilt when I was younger and found it to be amazingly hard, and actually found that I like to draw patterns more than try to actually sew on them. So I started to integrate these into a type of woven three-dimensional drawing. They're mounted on paper. This is another one in the series, also 19 by 24.
Holly, where did you learn to sew?
So my mother was, I come from a family they were in Germany, they were tailors. And my mother, of course, would make clothes, and whatever the curtains were was what my clothes were as a little girl. I unfortunately never learned to make clothes, but I definitely learned to love fabric. And I loved just looking at it and touching it because of the beautiful tactile quality. This is a piece titled She, which is this piece I think is about 18 feet wide and 8 feet high and about 6 feet deep. And it's colored pencil on both sides of the drafting film, hand cut and then layered into modules. This is about sort of the universal sense of femininity, but also power. Where does power come from? So here I was trying to draw from universal elements, universal archetypes. This is a series of assemblages I did called Arachne, and this is my homage to the weavers in the group. I never learned how to weave, but I definitely love cutting very thin pieces of the film, coloring it on both sides, cutting it, and then layering it. Because I think that reality is always sort of a grouping of just different textures and experiences. These are mounted on the wall, but can also be mounted on round surfaces so that they're portable. Colored pencil and drafting film about 3 by 3 feet. This is a side view. That's me working on it so you can get a sense of my scale. I did these in my kitchen originally. This is one of the largest pieces. This is for a show that I am doing at Slate Contemporary Gallery in Oakland, opening on April 1st. It's a large installation called Phoenix. This is a work in progress. It's 11 feet high by 11 feet wide. It's all basically graphite on drafting film. It is drawn on both sides. The drafting film is basically modules that are sewn together with a sewing machine and a little bit of archival double-sided tape. So to the meat of our presentation, of course, is spiral dance, and this is my journey there. Spiral dance was begun at the beginning of the pandemic when in San Francisco, we started to shelter in place. I was very much about affirming life, affirming power, feeling like I wanted to say yes to everything in my life. And so I started doing these. So the piece is about 12 feet wide in totality and about 9 feet high. And the patterns were drawn on both sides with colored pencils so they'd have a luminosity. I did get a lot of inspiration both from fabric design as well as aquatic elements and nature. But the drawing on here is all stream of consciousness. Of course, this is the very brave team at the museum installing the artwork at the height of a blizzard, which mad props to the group because I can't even imagine how that even happens, but there it is. And it was important to me that the piece had a sort of light airiness, and in the beautiful wood, you know, dark quality of the museum, it's just stunning. On the left, there is a beautiful work of Michael Sylvan Robinson, whose work I just love and follow. And there, of course, is my girl on the right there. And this is a larger, just a shot of the piece. I think for me, this is about the release of trauma. It's the release of fear. It's the affirmation of life. And, you know, I think as an artist, you know, at 49, you get to a place where you say yes to life, because to say no is just to be small. And this work is about taking space. And I think as a woman, it's really important to take up space. So that's kind of where this piece comes from. And that's me working on it. This is a sewing machine that my husband bought me many years ago. It's a 1968 Singer Fashion Mate, and I love it to pieces. My website is hollywongart.com. You can sign up for my newsletter if you'd like to follow my work. And of course, that's my Instagram name there. So I will pause here and see, I'll turn this back over to Emily to see if she'd like to discuss any questions or start the virtual museum tour, which I know we're all excited to see. Will I stop share?
Sure. Yes. So thank you so much, Holly. You make such lovely work. One person was wondering, why do you use drafting film?
So it's really interesting. I felt like I wanted my shapes to have a sculptural element. Because I share a studio with my husband who has used drafting film for many years, he introduced me to it. And I loved it because it was luminous, it had a presence of its own, and it allowed me, when you use a colored pencil, it basically the light goes through the pencil because it's like a wax. So light could pass through it and it has a presence. It does really the same thing with graphite. I'm very interested in the idea that something has a presence in that it integrates the environment around it.
Mm-hmm. And do you sew all your pieces on that machine, or?
So that is one of my favorite machines. I also make paintings and works on paper, and I do a lot of drawing. But sewing is always an element somewhere in my work, certainly in my large installation work. I'm not a big glue person because I'm sort of tidy a lot of the time. So I really love sewing machines. I'm sort of fastidious because when you sew it, that's it. You can rip out the seam, it'll be miserable, but.
Another person was wondering if you have any way of taking care of your back, hands. Do you have a physical practice? Do you do yoga or?
Well, my husband taught me Tai Chi. He's done Tai Chi for many, many years, and I learned Tai Chi, so that helps me with exercising. I do 108 Yang form, and I also jog a little bit, so that does help. But I get a lot of back pain, you know, it's okay.
On the drafting film material, is it frosted or matte on both sides?
So it is a matte surface. It is frosted in the sense that you can't see through. It's not like it's not like Duralar. It's not clear. It is, it's like luminous. It's like, yeah, it's it's like a whitish creamish color.
Mm. Yeah, I could feel that when we were installing the piece. And then are your works planned? Do you draw or sketch them beforehand, or are they kind of free form?
So I start by gathering images, actually often looking at patterns, fabric, nature, and then I sort of close my eyes. I find an internal space and I summon it. I summon the spirit. I can't say I really plan. I summon it, I listen to it, I respond to it, I stand back and I watch, and then it teaches me, and then I respond back. Um, then I draw based on what I see and I make plans, but it isn't like, I never start with, well, I got this, you know. And there's nothing wrong with artists that do, and I think it's a beautiful thing when somebody actually has a plan. In all other parts of my life, I have a plan. But in my studio, I'm very receptive.
So maybe we can switch to the gallery so we can look at the beautiful work while we're talking.
Right.
Devin, do you want to come on? That's Devin, our education coordinator, manager, and collections manager. So we're going to start so this is when you first walk into the gallery, and Holly's piece is on the right. And I wonder if in the video, that'll make it bigger. So you can see there's a lot of movement within her work, and sort of it catches the light in a really beautiful way. There's a lyricism to the lines. So someone was wondering, do you sew through the drafting film itself? Yes, right.
I do, and I think someone's saying, I only see you, not the work.
Okay.
A way to only see you, Emily.
Does that work?
No, I think we can only, I think yeah, it's only going to the speaker.
Okay, 1 second. Apologies.
Someone said, can you spotlight the gallery? This is when all, there you go. There it is.
Okay, so we'll start again. So when you walk from the atrium, from the museum's atrium, Holly's piece is right on the right. And you can see there's a lot of, it catches the light in a really beautiful way. There's a lot of movement. It came to us in 3 pieces. So Holly has this really, she was very good about providing installation instructions. So she actually put the pattern on a large sheet of paper so that we could match the pattern exactly. And then we strung it with monofilament. There's probably 18 pieces of monofilament up there, and had a team of about 4 to get it up into the air, and had Holly on FaceTime. So it's amazing what technology can do now. And you can see there's this layering within the drawing. So those pieces layer on top of each other to a certain degree, and then at times don't. And then, you know, it kind of gives you these kind of a stained glass look, this like these windows. It is a flat piece. So you can walk around it though in the gallery. We're gonna show you guys the other side. But it has these kind of shadows and bright colors. It's really incredible. That's coming around. Holly, can you talk a bit about the title and the meaning of spiral dance?
So spiral dance refers to pre-Christian traditions of, you know, many peoples that gather into circles and draw down energy from the moon. The idea is that you're drawing down power from nature. And I was trying to access something about being female that was pre-Western culture, sort of before memory, before gender roles, before definitions, before restrictions. Yeah. So it's kind of like, it's, I think in some ways my voice cracks a little bit because when you make art and it's very close to who you are, it's kind of like your purpose. So it's definitely that, you know, that place in which being a woman is not about a definition. It's not about what you are or not. And so this is about that perfect place before, it's that we already are perfect. Our bodies are perfect. Yeah, I would say that. It's, it's that, it's, it's kind of that magical, that place when you're born. And I think that's, I guess it's primordial, I guess. Yeah.
You're getting a lot of love on the chat. So the piece it has some weight to it. It doesn't, we have fans going in the gallery and it doesn't really move. So you can imagine kind of what that, you know, that weight is, but it's not heavy, right? Like the trick wasn't lifting it. It was just getting those, really getting the monofilament up there and having the, you know, the layers overlap in the way that Holly wanted. Yes, it's someone saying, I am amazed by how rigid it seems for such a flexible material. Mm-hmm.
Well, it's because you hung it perfectly. That's why.
Someone was wondering if you've ever installed these works outside.
So I haven't, though the question has come up about like, well, Holly, what if somebody wants you to do something outside? Like, what's your move, you know? And I think I'm started to experiment with a material called Lexan, which is a more durable type of a type of plastic that can be painted on and has a luminous quality, because I do hope to do some of these as public works. I mean, I'm in love with drafting film because it's, you know, I mean, let's face it, folks, I can roll this up and put it in, you know, a small room. But for more permanent types of venues, yeah, my hope is to do these on, you know, some type of Lexan that is very durable and can be painted.
And you've been working out of your home for the last 20 years, is that right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And you work in your kitchen and in your living room? Is that... Or do you have a studio?
Yeah. I mean, we share the whole house, and whatever room we need to have is the room that, we need to, we're very flexible. We're both artists. So, sometimes I use the kitchen, sometimes he uses the kitchen. We have no furniture in the living room. We have no, I mean, I don't have any furniture. We have like a few very sad looking chairs, and then everything is studio space.
How do you hang to photograph?
So we clear the rug out of the living room, we hang it up. I typically like to do it in the morning because it lights up the wall, the back wall in our living room. We get morning light and it kind of illuminates it. And then I just use a simple iPhone 11 to photograph. Now, I'm not going to lie, that looks awesome in the barn there. It is just just the light in that space is just, I'm like blown away by it. It didn't look like that in the house. So I think it's just darkness, both the dark and light happening together is really great. Yeah.
Okay. And then someone was asking about three-dimensional works, and you do make three-dimensional pieces. She was very much kind of, it's similar to Spiral Dance, and you were intending for people to walk through that one.
That's interesting. I mean, you can sort of walk around She. And some of the early works I showed you from 2018, Mind Forest, people in North Carolina could not stop themselves from marching through it. It was like, it literally was a forest, and people really enjoyed walking through it. And you could, because you get lost in this sort of like forest of polyester tulle, and everybody had a story about how they made their kids tutus, and and it's great. I do like when people are able to walk around pieces, which is why I draw on both sides of things.
Mm-hmm. And how long does something like this take you?
So Spiral Dance took me about 2.5 months. Phoenix took me about 2.5 months. She took me, it's a kind of 2-monther kind of deal.
And are you working on things consecutively, or like or at the same time, simultaneously?
With Spiral Dance, I was pretty focused just on Spiral Dance, but then after I finish large pieces like that, I then go through spurts where I'll make 6 or 8 small works in a month-and-a-half time. I find I work, I mean, it's true, I work a lot, and I find work anxiety relieving. I find it comforting and healing, so I do as much of it as I can get away with.
Yeah, I've read that you wake up at 3 a.m. Is that true?
I get up at 2 a.m. So for fellow artists on the call, we're all trying to swing it, right? So in my world, I get up at 2. I have a full-time day job, and I work before my day job. And for me, that solid block of time early in the morning is really, really important for me to get any headway at all. So, yeah.
Wow. Is that every day or just
Every day?
Oh my goodness.
So if you wake up at the same time, you don't make your body, crazy.
Does anyone have any other questions? It's a beautiful work. How has the pandemic influenced your work?
So, it's a great question. Spiral Dance was made at the beginning of the pandemic. And I think in the beginning, I had a lot of hope that, the pieces is certainly very hopeful and joyful. With the pandemic and, all of the things that have been happening geopolitically, I started to feel, I wouldn't say that I lost hope, but I felt a lot of sadness and a lot of grief. And so some of the colors started to leave my work, and Phoenix is probably one of the darkest works that I made. But Phoenix and a lot of the paintings that are associated with that, which are going to be showing at Slate, are, one thing you don't see here because you can't burn plastic. With my works on paper, I burn with candle smoke. So I've been doing, during the pandemic, I've been painting and drawing and then burning it. And there's this notion of destruction and then rising again. And with a lot of my work, there is a sense of that things die and then they begin again. And Phoenix was about the reinvention of oneself. Phoenix is very much a metaphor for the body, and this is very much a metaphor for the body. My work got darker. I went deeper, I think, as an artist, because I had to, the solutions, there are no solutions. So I had to draw from, how do I redefine myself? How does society recreate itself? You know, how do we burn through, you know, greed, hate, and delusion? You know, that's sort of the metaphor of burning. How do, you know, and so once the Buddhist, the fire sermon about the eyes burning, burning with hate, you know, all of the notion of the sense of burning and destruction and then coming clean again.
Another question is this the only Holly Wong piece at the museum at this time? And yeah, it is. She was going to come and install, so that, and obviously we could not get on a plane, so we installed it for her with her help via technology. And yeah, I mean, it's beautiful. It looks great in that space. I wish we had more of your work up, but yeah. How do you make your color choices?
You know, I think some of it is driven by the materials I use. So the colored pencil, this is a type of Prismacolor American brand colored pencil. It's waxy, it's very rich. So it's going to be some brilliant colors, and that's going to be how that kind of rolls. You know, it's not subtle in that way. My paintings and drawings, because I do so much layering, there is a bit more of a diffuseness with that work. You can see those on my website. I think that I feel it. It's so much of what I do is based on feeling and instinct. And I think that I've learned to trust that. There are so many other areas in my life that I work in the realm of logic. I think someone asked what my work hours are. You know, they're the typical 8 to 5 work hours. I have an MFA in fine art, but I also have an MBA in finance. And so that's my world. I work at, you know, UCSF. And so there's two sides to my life. And that part of my brain that's logical, that it's shot, it's taken, we're good. So this is what I got left.
Have you ever used traditional fabrics? I know you've tried quilting. So.
Yeah, so some of my earlier work, so I did, I really tried. I got a Ginny Beyer book, you know, and I was going to make a go of it. And I did try to draft my own patterns, but I looked at them and I was like, you know what, these are like, none of the points match. They just look crazy, you know, like they just didn't, it was just like, no. So what I ended up doing is I took the quilt blocks and I burned them not like all of it, like it burned some of it. And then I started sewing them together into wall-based assemblages. They're not featured here, they're earlier. And I would embroider on them and then hand sew drawings into them and whatever. I mean, they're just like, yeah, I liked working with fabric, but the thing was I wanted to see through the pattern.
Mm.
And the only way I could figure out how to do that was to actually manually create the pattern, or, you know, Xeroxing is one thing I've done where I Xerox patterned origami onto transparency films because you can, again, see through the pattern. But I had an issue of scale there, and I wanted to see it big. I wanted to be as big as my imagination was, which is why I started drawing.
And how do you make your cuts? Do you use an X-Acto knife or?
I do. I just use a good old fashioned X-Acto. I think I use like an 11 blade, just put that puppy in there and just, you know, I just, I feel embarrassed because it's like, well, do you have a plan? Well, no. I just have this feeling. So maybe I could explain it that one thing that I learned from my husband, who had gone to the jazz workshop and lots of improvisational jazz in San Francisco in the 60s, he learned, he loved jazz, and he shared that with me. And I have an absolute passion for jazz. And so jazz is a major influence on my work. And I think it makes more, my work makes more sense if you think about improvisational music like jazz.
I can see that. Yes, for sure. There is a lot of like musicality to the work. Do you use a special needle on your sewing machine or?
Oh, heck, you know what? I totally should be. Oh my God, but I don't even know what I use. I think I just use like normal cotton, like whatever is, I don't know if it's an 11 or a 12, this is pathetic. Because I'm probably in a room full of people that know what they're doing. I think it's like normal needle that you would use to mend cotton, right? But drafting film runs through there like butter. And I will say that my 1968 Singer holds tension really, really well. So it doesn't do all this, you know, how like sewing machines that some of the more modern ones don't have really good tension. But this is, you know, I think we got it for like 80 bucks used. It was great.
Someone says that sewing machine needle comment was so refreshing. I love it. Well, does anyone else have any other questions for Holly? I would like to thank her for sharing this work with us. She created this piece specifically for this exhibition, and as I mentioned, I saw her work at the Evanston Art Museum and just thought it was beautiful. There's something just so entrancing about it. So I'm just so pleased that she agreed to be in the exhibition and made this work. It's really, really wonderful. This has been, yeah, and you're getting lots of love now. Someone says, this has been a fabulous presentation. Thank you. Thank you. The piece is lovely. Thank you so much. Your work is stunning. I hope our paths cross sometime. This was absolutely amazing. So.
Oh, and somebody asked if I use special thread. You know, because I tried to be a quilter, at first I was religious about cotton thread, you know, the silk wrapped Mettler cotton, you know, I hope I sound halfway intelligent here, but you know, I was really like, oh, I only use like cotton thread. But then I started really liking this, this synthetic stuff, which is a nightmare to get through the machine, but it comes in gold and light reflective stuff. I think it comes from Taiwan. And I started using that. Now in this particular piece, it is just cotton thread that is sewn through it because cotton, of course, as everybody knows, is a far more stable thread to work with. And it doesn't, you know, sort of skirt around. So I used red. can I explain why I used red?
Oh, please do. Yes.
Well, you know what? So just like the sewing line is a bloodline, the sewing, I mean, it is a bloodline. When I sew, I think of it as my arteries. When I draw, I find it to be very much like an arterial network.
Hmm.
So this is like it's like a bloodline. And that's why I think I made it red.
Hmm. Do you think of these as sort of self-portraits or?
I do. I think that because as a woman, there is so much denial of our bodies in this culture. There's so much about this notion that we must be a certain size, that we must a certain gender, that we must live our lives a certain way. That when I make this artwork, I try to say that we are without bounds. And I define woman in the broadest sense, also including people that identify as women. I have a very broad sense of that. So I think that is why this work is it has that feeling. I think feminine isn't quite the word. I think it's just it's like earth, it's beginning.
Someone was wondering if you have any book recommendations regarding your thoughts on taking back feminine power. Maybe you can put those in the chat or share.
Well, so yeah, I will. This I was actually reading the book Spiral Dance when I was when I was looking at that. When I made this piece, I was reading that book. Sometimes I go back and think about some of the early feminist stuff that was written in the 1970s. I was just a little girl, but there's a lot of good stuff there. There's a lot of history to draw from.
Well, thank you, Holly. And thank you everyone for coming and seeing this beautiful work. I'm glad we got to do this virtually. And these programs are free, but we do appreciate donations to support the museum. And we're just really grateful for SDA and for Holly for supporting this show. So. Thank you. Thanks, Holly.
All righty. So I guess I'll sign off.
Well, maybe, people typically say thank you in the chat and
okay.
Around for a minute. I'm going to stop live streaming.